Perfecto. Thank you very much, dear. In advance, very good morning, very good afternoon, very good night in other countries, dear college. I want to offer a very special thanks to the organizers of this great event. Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera because in Sonora Desert we have some inclements, we have some problems because we have some meteorological problems here in this region. Okay, please tell me if the my slides is moving.
It is in the first introduction slide.
Yes, is moving.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, correct, perfect. Okay, Dr. Dashang Sang has given us a lesson on the importance of the water and how to use it. Without a doubt, these types of talks should be more consistent. Thank you very much, Dr. Shang. Uh, and now we are going to walk with our next presentation, which is titled The Role of the Agricultural Engineer as a Cultural Editor in the Longevity of a Society. I'm going to talk some experiences agrobiotechnological that have been obtained in some of the deserts and arid areas of the world. This presentation is in honor of my father, Gilberto Rueda de León. It is important to give credit to this entire group of collaborators who play an important role in the expansion of knowledge and technology transfer. They work in these international institutions. Thank you very much for this collaboration. In this image, we can see their photos of each of them. Some of them are omitted because we make up around 40 members. And among which some of them are no longer among us physically. We have and show all our gratitude and special affection. All the information that was expressed verbally is contained in the next following works. I'm going to show you some books that we have according our knowledge or transfer of technology in some countries. Desalinity, a problem or an option to the agriculture sector. Another book is Plant Growth Promoting Bacteria. The other is The Importance of Sustainability for Community Development and Organic Agriculture Current Issues. This is another book, The Allophytes into the Agriculture of Dry Arid Zones. As a first approximation, I will be addressing where we are located and the areas we study. Some edapoclimatic factors, the importance of indigenous communities, their knowledge, some agrobiotechnological experiences, and finally, I will talk about how the agronomist plays an important role as a culture editor in a society, seeking to influence people's longevity. On this same slide, we can see the 10 main deserts in the world. And we can see how in the northwest of the Mexican Republic, which is bordering with with the United States, there is one that is the Sonora Desert. It is one of the largest deserts in the world, located in two states of the Mexico country. These states are Sonora and Baja California, Mexico, bordering the state of Arizona in the United States. It has approximately an area of 4,000 square kilometers, where in the center of this desert there is an area of craters where there are mainly four. In the northwest of Mexico, where the Sonora Desert is located, there are communities that live under these conditions. We are talking about around 2.5 million. When we are in the area of craters and we are into of these craters, we are talking about a temperatures close to 60 or 62 degrees Celsius. Other characteristics that these craters has is soils very poor in organic matter and a high salinity in the soil, which it is the half of seawater. Remember that seawater has 30 to 35 grams per liter of water. So the quantities of salts in the soil of the craters is 15 until to 18 or 20 grams per kilogram of soils. This temperature, close to 60 degrees Celsius, and salinity conditions promote special vegetation and microorganisms with tolerance to salinity and temperature. It is important to note that in this type of environment, the radiation is very high in certain seasons of the year. We reach up to 3,000 lux per square meter. This means 300 spotlights of 100 watts per square meter. A light intensity that doesn't weaken waste in the generation of clean or renewable energy. Then, taking into account the high temperatures, intense solar radiation, low content of organic matter, and high concentration of salts, the question arises, how does vegetation exist? Considering above mentioned, we can notice that in these craters there is a little vegetation that thrives in these extreme conditions. But precisely these type of conditions are what open up a broader panorama for us to be able to obtain microorganisms associated with the roots of the few plants and be able to identify them and see the possibility to produce biofertilizers that are used in the desert of the world and thus promote agriculture that generates human food, animal fodder, and other agroindustrial activities. This is an appreciation of the American continent where we can visualize other deserts in Latin America. The group of research to which I belong has a premise that consists in solve global problems together with the generation of knowledge, involving ourselves mainly in those demands that are requested at an international level. Some of them are what we can see below. Something that is important to emphasize is that we don't solve problems. We generate alternative solutions that together with other groups or teams, we can solve some things. The principal problems that we have is the travel without harming the environment, preventing antibiotic resistance, making sustainability to nutritious food available, and ensuring access to safe and clean water. It's important to include Another big problems in the world that is the zoonotic diseases. In this sense, new generations play an important role in joining as long as there is an application in society. So the students should think about bringing science from the lab to the job market. Another is provide basic and technological knowledge tools for solving global problems, including agri-food and environmental problems. One of the main activities that we develop in is bioprospecting, which it is an alternative in arid deserts areas in search of biomass. This biomass could be vegetative materials, microorganisms, animal, insects. For example, to identify halotolerance, thermotolerance, and the possibility of involving them in the productive sector. For example, in the case of vegetables as crops with agroindustrial potential. On this slide, we can see the different areas of application that the group of researchers developed both at the level of plants and at the level of microorganisms. We can detect at in the high slide plants. We work with this halotolerance and we are going to detect if we can use this kind of plant that are growing in the natural deserts to use as a human food. For example, organoleptic quality of obtaining lipid or protein, or another activity that we can use in this kind of plants is to further reforestation and afforestation soil, bioremediation, biofuel, industry plants extracts to use as a biopesticides, to apply biobactericide, biofungicide, bioherbicides, bioinsecticide, bionematicides, and diseases in animals or humans. It's important that if we want to green in the deserts, it's very important to use the seawater. In this sense, the seawater irrigation in a novel crops with agroindustrial importance. Considering microorganisms, we can see these two types, halotolerance and thermotolerance. And we can use as biofertilizers. It's important to study the slope release. And with this kind of microorganisms and other microorganisms that we can detect in this kind of areas, we can use the arthropod exoskeletons to use chitosan, hydroxyalkanoates, polyestresses, and to use as a substitutes for conventional and petroleum-based plastics. We currently have an international project where we all collaborate, and it has been submitted to international organizations. The motto that we use is how much progress has been made in alleviating hunger and malnutrition on a global scale. We are still far from having a world in which the entire population is free from hunger. This global project is named Feeding the Mind to Fight Hunger. And in all bioprospecting, we use biotechnology. A biotechnology that, depending on the area of application, has a different color. So it's very important that the basic concepts of why we work on some lines of research. These concepts could be autoconservation, autoregulation, auto-perpetuation, beings share strategies to sustain our species. On this slide, we can see how the knowledge generated help us identify the relative risk of mortality from the foods that we consume and the average relative environmental impact. The current pandemic has led the population to be more sensitive and aware of the quality of the food they consume, which is why different professions must take this into account. Let's remember that one of the main strategies we want is self-preservation or staying in this beautiful life. That is why any action we take for ourselves will not be enough but inclusive. Each action that we also see in each of the sectors of a society is important to take into account, which is why we will see the next video below.
Across the Sea of Cortez from Mexico's Baja California is the stark coastline of the Sonoran Desert. For centuries, part of this coast has been the home of a small Indian nation. These are the Comcaac. Much of the world knows them as the Seri. There have never been very many of them. Today there are about 1,000, and they live on what may seem like the bleakest of coastal deserts. Until you see how the Seri take care of their part of it, their green estuaries. The Seri are famous among environmentalists as a people who have mastered their desert, know all the little ticking details of living with and preserving their few plants and animals and sea creatures. They sing of this. Theirs is a poetry of the sea and earth. The Seri are known for small wood and stone carvings and reed baskets, and providing tour guides for the coast and offshore islands. What else could they do here? Who in this modern world might need and value their cultural expertise with plants and animals of the coastal desert?
It's very important to indicate that in our desert Sonora, there are some native peoples that are living, and they know many special plants that we can use as a forage, as a feed a human, as another activities. So we have to collaborate with this kind of people. Yes, it is true that we have been working with some plants, two of which are representative worldwide. These two plants is Salicornia bigelovi as a new crop and alternative to include in the agriculture sector. And another plant is Cannabis sativa, considering some secondary metabolites like a CBD. I don't know if all the attendees understand Spanish. I'm going to present this video to look or to find how we are working in some deserts in the world.
Que resulta de la convivencia sana entre el hombre y la naturaleza.
This is native language of the native people. I think the desert, how we are working in the desert.
Si alguien conoce el desierto y sus misterios, el mar y sus secretos, el volcán y su grandeza, son los seris, los últimos habitantes de las tierras más áridas del estado de Sonora, y guardianes por tradición de su historia e identidad.
Yo creo que debemos de respetarlos en primer lugar, de imitarlos en su forma de proteger y de estar en contacto con la naturaleza.
Entendiendo la filosofía de los seris, un grupo de investigadores de la Universidad de Sonora estudian los mares y los desiertos para mejorar los cultivos y la alimentación humana.
Que estamos enfocados a conocer cuál es la biodiversidad de esos que están presentes en los desiertos del mundo. Recordemos que alrededor de un 65 o un 75% de la producción de alimentos se produce precisamente en ambientes áridos salinos.
Los investigadores buscan aprovechar la cercanía con el mar. Actualmente están experimentando el riego de cultivos con agua marina.
Ciérrale poquito más, ciérrale poquito.
Ve usted el tamaño de estas calabazas gigantes. Esto es solo una muestra de lo que estos campos de cultivo con agua de mar.
This is some samples. Sorry, well, I don't know what. Okay, this is some samples
Los cultivos,
of the
recordemos
crops that we are cultivating using water.
Ve usted
Okay.
el tamaño de estas calabazas gigantes. Esto es solo una muestra de lo que estos campos de cultivo con agua de mar pueden producir. Aquí están estos chiles serranos ricos en una mayor cantidad de vitamina A, muy bueno para la vista. En el caso de la calabaza, la vitamina E, que ayuda al mejoramiento de la piel. O en el caso, por ejemplo, del ajo, que ayuda como antibiótico natural para el organismo, para el estómago. Esto y más es lo que se puede producir aquí en estos campos de experimentación, campos de cultivo de la Universidad de Sonora.
el doctor Edgar Omar Rueda ha estudiado otra planta nativa sagrada para los seres. Es la Salicornia bigelovi. Crece en la zona costera del desierto sonorense. Tiene una alta tolerancia a la salinidad y un valor nutricional importante. El aceite que produce esta planta se puede utilizar como combustible. Un combustible tan potente que podría generar una energía similar a la turbocina usada en los aviones, pero 80% más limpio.
Estamos dando ese empuje de cómo de utilizar agua de mar, plantas con potencial agroindustrial y una biofertilización desde el punto de vista sustentable. Es un proyecto, es un modelo que ya lo estamos desarrollando en el sur de África con la participación de otros organismos internacionales para proveer de alimento a ciertas comunidades de bajos recursos.
También están colaborando en programas de reverdecimiento de desiertos en Irán y Chile.
Ahí tenemos la colaboración con el gobierno iraní para enverdecer un alto porcentaje de su desierto.
Otro misterio del desierto sonorense lo encierran sus cráteres volcánicos. Viajamos a la reserva de la biosfera del Pinacate, una región rica en cráteres inmersa en el desierto de Altar. Recientemente la UNESCO nombró a esta sorprendente reserva y a su fascinante desierto Patrimonio de la Humanidad. Los investigadores creen que este tipo de suelo podría aprovecharse en la fabricación de biofertilizantes.
Mis abuelos siempre han sido respetuosos en forma de convivir con la naturaleza.
Esta filosofía les ha sido transmitida por don Antonio, máxima autoridad del Consejo de Ancianos de la Comunidad Seres. Don Antonio ha sido invitado por organismos internacionales a narrar sus experiencias de respeto y conservación de la naturaleza a varios países del mundo. A sus 81 años de edad, dice que se conserva fuerte y sano por consumir solo lo que la naturaleza da al hombre.
Yo vivo con pura carne de caguama, nada más. No conozco comidas mexicanas, arroz, tomate, frijol, harinas, pan, azúcar y harinas, nada de eso.
Sus antepasados continúan vigilando y protegiendo los tesoros del desierto.
90 years old.
La comunidad científica también busca darle valor a los tesoros que el desierto y el mar, desde tiempos inmemorables, ha puesto en resguardo y aprovechamiento del ser humano.
Okay, and it's important to indicate that in some deserts of the world we are applying this model of plant microorganisms interaction in arid coastal and desert environmental. This model is called technical collaboration in the production of halophytes and their interaction with plant growth promoting bacteria for the production of food, biofuels, and afforestation. One millions hectares are directed worldwide for agriculture. However, several countries such as Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Iran, and Africa reduce productivity by availability of water resources, aquifer depletion, salinity, and saline intrusion. This reorients us to a reconversation of agriculture, and the question is, do we have to use of new resource, new material vegetatives like salt plant tolerance to sow in deserts area considering the seawater? Above all, because bringing conventional crops such as tomato, chili, onion, potato to desert areas, production costs increasingly increase. Costs that are generated by these inclement water or soils. If we analyze the surface of land that can be directed to food production, we can see that they excess 100 million hectares compared to 13 million that can be irrigated with fresh water. Those areas suitable for saline agriculture and or using seawater can be seen in this image by viewing these images of tractors. In this type of desert areas, or also those in arid zones, a factor that reduces the production of conventional crops is salinity, which is a factor that increasingly afflicts agriculture worldwide. And the plant tolerance salts could be a good answer. This kind of plants, its salt tolerance depends on a range of adaptation that embrace many aspects of plant physiology, including, for example, compartmentalization of ions, osmolytes, answer to the germination, answer of the osmotic aspects, succulence, and transport of some ions, answer to enzymes, excretion of salts, and genetic control. But considering the above mentioned, the ability of plant cells to maintain low cytosolic concentration of sodium is an essential process associated with the ability to grow in high concentration of salts. Of course, new lines of knowledge of these mechanisms by which plants are tolerant have emerged from the identification using this kind of plant like Arabidopsis thaliana. This Arabidopsis thaliana is a good plant for our studies because it's an ideal system for genetic and molecular studies. Unfortunately, there is a little research that combines studies of crops and other measures of biophysical and biochemical characteristics of the plants. It's important of traits to exhibit the ability to maintain high plant productivity in salinity environments. Of course, many questions emerging with rapid advance in the possible genetic transfer of salt-tolerant traits from alophytes to cultivate plants, which it needs to be answered. So, it's very important that the new biological techniques now established, we can begin to plan for rapid progression in improving the salt resistance of cultivated plants in the near future. So it's very important that we need to put the results together to develop a regional or national innovation program. And taking the title of our participation, we will introduce ourselves to how specialists in food production play an important role as a culture editors. So, it's important to know what is an editor. The editor communicates, transforms, and conceives a text as a finished product, organized according to technical needs and the market. Its purpose is the transmission of a cultural product that ranges from authorial creation to the appropriation of the content by the reader or consumer or some other professional who maintains collaboration with the profession of agricultural engineer. The agronomy, of course, as a branch of engineering, covers three central aspects of agronomy: agriculture, livestock, and technology. Within the wide range of activities that an agronomist carries out, in essence, it is about improving agronomic production, managing its production, and avoiding negative repercussion on the environment. The enrichment of our profession doesn't lie solely at the level of agricultural or livestock production system. It is of utmost importance that the new professional doesn't close himself off at these levels. And one of those openings is to realize how each of the products that are generated in agricultural production systems influence the longevity of human beings. But this becomes more interesting when, from another perspective, how is that not only the profession or agricultural engineer, but all those professionals anchored to a society can influence the longevity of generations? However, before intruding on how we can influence, it is important to consider or know how or what these people do to reach the age, starting from the premise that one of the things we want most in the world is to remain. And to learn a little more about the work of these long-lived people, we will delve into the knowledge generated by Dr. George Solomon. George Solomon was the one who created physico-neuroimmunology, which is the study of how process, cultural beliefs, thoughts, and emotion affect the immune, endocrine, and nervous system. There is a study where the intestinal flora of depressed people is transferred to healthy rats. It has been observed that the rats also became depressed, indicating that there are depressed genes that are active. it has been observed that the type of diet plays a fundamental role in people's mood. That is, there is a correlation between the management of your emotions considering the type and quality of food that is ingested. So, if this is true, without a doubt the agronomist, while more quality he has in his production of his food, more we can influence in a better society. For example, when the nut is crushed, liquid fat rich in polyunsaturated fatty acid is obtained. If a processor, another person of that product tell us that he want to make glasses of milk to be donated to indigenous communities, but firstly he wants to enrich it with omega-3 and omega-6 from walnut oil, in his request he tell us, I want that walnut to have more liquid fat content but above all rich in omega-3. As an agronomist, knowing the physiology of the walnut tree and under what condition it needs, I'm going to make it produce more omega-3. And considering this example and generating awareness in new professionals of how we can influence people longevity, without a doubt we play an important role. So we must make this type of actions with conscience a habit until it becomes a culture. Taking this above into account, it is extremely important to first delve into what long-lived people are like and how they act, and by getting to know these types of people, we can enlarge of knowledge of a profession with the essential action that a person of that type does. So, gerontology is responsible for the study of health, psychology, and the social and economic integration of the people in all age. The evidence for what works in centenarians, people who are 100 years old or older, as a neurophysiologist has been thought to be something genetic. We can detect that 25% of what defines longevity can be attributed to genetic causes, and 75% have to do with things that are literally outside of our body. And we have a question. How have centenarians been studied? First of all, from an anthropological point of view, who goes in doesn't try to change anything or do physiological tests, if he doesn't go into the culture to see how they see the world, that is, what are the routines and rituals they have. These studies have been carried out in the blue zones. To understand what are the blue zones, this is the regions or parts of the world where there are many centenarians, for example, Greece, Italy, Loma Linda, California, and Costa Rica. Centenarians have a way of seeing the world. They are out of the norm. They are at the extremes. Centenarians are the fastest growing segment in other parts of the world and the United States. life expectancy in Cuba has gone down, but centenarians have increased. It's important to consider that the curve is moving towards the extremes. With science, they think you are going to live 19 years. The pool of centenarians in each country is increasing significantly. So, it's important to consider your ritual, your power. In Cuba, a 102 years old centenarian was asked, "What have you done and what are you doing to reach this age?" This question is more anthropological. You ask him what is that you doing in a way that gives value to your life. What do you like? What do you like? What was immune power has? When you do what you love, whatever that is immunological increase longevity. In this section, it is very important to identify the meaning of ritual, and for this question arise. What is a ritual? That's what immune power is all about. Something that has a higher level. Something that identifies you with a meaning in your life. Ritual is different from a routine. A routine has a function. For example, when you bath, to be clean. When you brush your teeth is for hygiene. This is two examples important to show the difference between ritual and routine. Are those things that have value, that identify you with your culture, okay? That give you a sense of control in your life, that give you an identification in what values you. All of these boost you immunological is beneficial. Other question is, and rituals have to do with beliefs? It's important to know that religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs have an impact on longevity. The last 150 years, we had to evolve to know how the Homo sapiens should survive. Therefore, the brain had to learn to interpret. The immune, endocrine, and nervous systems had to learn the cultural brain. If a person doesn't believe what your word, biology responds to what you believe. Then you forget about endorphins, oxytocins, and all the things that come in love. Belief is what modifies biology. Nothing comes from the outside. This kind of person has 4 emotions. Yes, and we have a question. How are they perceiving the world? This 4 perception is with these 4 questions. How do they perceive time? How do they perceive health? How do they perceive again? How do they perceive self-worth? There are 4 very important emotions physically that prevail within centenarians: gratitude, generosity, admiration, and curiosity. According to the perception of the time, it is very important in longevity. All centenarians think they have all the time that they need. As you get older, stress increases because you have less time to live. Centenarians are not like that. The brain makes a time space. and then it tells you what is they going to live, what it is going to do. That is very important in the physico-neuroimmunology of longevity. When you get older, time goes by faster. The question is why? Three are some answers, and one of them is the brain changes. It atrophies and you have less time to live. However, the curiosity is what makes you feel that time can be prolonged. And then the brain pays attention to novelty, and that makes it possible to stretch time. And that is what is perceived. Centenarians people have everything, a very high curiosity that makes an elongation of time and doesn't allow you to live in fear with time neurophysiologically. What happens when you retire? They lose intellectual stimulation. A decline in health is coming. When they retire, they live 4 or 5 more years without meaning and start to get sick the first year. Why do they start getting sick? We have to answer. The brain needs changes. The brain needs meaning. We have to serve with what we know, not with the humility of serving. We are talking about stretching time, feeling that you have an infinity life, and it is opposed to an ancient philosophy that you can die at any time. How do these two positions play out, which could be opposite of each other? Pleasure is so based on fear. If you do something because time is running out, then pleasure has no physical neuroimmunological value. A centenarian is asked, what time do you have in your life? And they answer, all the time in the world. They don't live to live, but the way they live with longevity. They are not worried about the time. They live in the moment. Buddhists say, the little so that you can accomplish it enough until you come along and do nothing and accomplishing everything. This is a philosophy of life. Okay? How we are in a good time, Doctora, because we can introduce how we are collaborating with other teams of researchers in other countries. Do we have a good time? Okay, I'm going to tell you how we are working in other desert areas. We can see in this slide with the circle how we are applying our model of interaction plant microorganisms using plant growth promoting bacteria. Of course, they are halotolerant and thermotolerant, and we are using as a biofertilizers with halophytes, considering the seawater. This is one more slide how we are working with Hormozgan in Hormozgan, Iran, greening the Iranian desert using seawater with halophytes. okay, for fodder for camels with Alophytes salicornia, and the use of biofertilizers, especially plant growth promoting bacteria. In these deserts areas, many desert areas are close with the beach, with the oceans. So we have oyster production system like in estuaries like Puerto Peñasco, Sonora, Mexico. And we are working the aquaculture, considering agriculture with alophytes. This is another slide, how we are using some pools to reproduce important aquatic animals. Yes, some pools. This is another activities with the intervention by Caritas International and the Vatican Scientific Committee in Roma. Okay. This is to feed some native people in the south of Africa using alophytes, and to introduce this kind of alophytes in milk bottles. We are working working with bioprospection in Patagonia, Argentina. It's very important to open and detect other kind of plants that are growing in this kind of areas, because this kind of countries has a long areas of deserts. This kind of plants, soleran plants, they can use as a forage and to feed humans. In this slide, how we are working at the point of the south in Latin America. I'm going to work some native peoples that they are collecting some plants to know what is the protein percent and carbohydrates percent and fatty acid percents. Okay. Some plants like Salicornia bigelovi, they are these kind of plants are growing in many countries. We are cultivating to domesticate this kind of plants. Okay. In this slide, I can show you the test carried out on sheep feeding with this species. Give the meat a special characteristic in its composition. For example, cholesterol content, because this kind of animals has highly cholesterol. But when we use this kind of alophytes, we can reduce until to 50% of cholesterol. This is another subproduct of Salicornia bigelovi. How we can use? Okay. Because alophytes from deserts and or coastal areas can be an alternative in food security. This is some animals, sheep, using as a feed our Salicornia bigelovi production. It's important to know that the cost in London of this Salicornia could be $20 by libra. Some products, okay, how we can produce from Salicornia bigelovi, bioprospection in Argentina. Other photos. Okay. In Chile, Atacama, Chile, we are greening some percent of the deserts using nopal, because they have a good sector like a minery, and they need a carbon point And this nopal production, they are used as a point of carbon. This is another trees like a paulonia. It's important that in this kind of cities or communities, we are greening the boulevards using alophytes. In Chile, Universidad Serena, how we are domesticating this kind of alophytes using seawater irrigation, and how we can detect the biofuel in this kind of plants, and could be a sustainability alternatives. Jatropha is another example, okay? And how some other organizations are inviting us to apply our model to reforestation, to reforest some areas and to increase this kind of animals, okay? Some confidential convenios, okay? Some corporation Rochman, how they are working with us to collaborate in other countries. This is the goals, okay? This is some characteristic how Salicornia bigelovi could be as a good plant to use in anti-inflammatory problems with cancer in the humans. Okay, this is all of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attentions. If you have a question, we can talk about this.